It is time once again, as we are getting close to the release of Special Booster 2.5 in about a month. It is time to start talking about some of the stuff that will be released when we get it here in the TCG. But we have until February 28th, but we are back again as it is time for What's the Scoop to return, as we will be covering one of the decks returning out of BT19 as we have Blue Flare. It is time to light things up as we get into this deck today. But before I get into it, as always, I just wanted to let you guys know that you could help us out by accelerating the subs. It always helps out as we're climbing higher and higher, and we want to hit those thresholds and push past the barriers with your assistance. But more importantly, if this is your first What's the Scoop, you also get to know that when you get a first look, so do I, as I get to tell you, well, you can sit back, relax, play this in the background, listen, or just simply enjoy the video as I talk about these great cards and inform you so you don't have to go anywhere else and get it all here. Talking about the archetype of Blue Flare, we actually have 6 cards to look at today, as this archetype has been receiving some pretty solid support to bring it back into the metagame. As we'll start off quick, as we actually have a brand new level 3 to start with as we go up the line. Starting off, we have a brand new GREYMON here, where on play and on deletion, by placing one Blue Flare trait Digimon card from your hand under any one of your tamers, you get to draw 1 card. And this card is obviously always treated as a reptile, but is also a Blue Flare Digimon. Moving into the next one, we have a brand new Blue Flare GREYMON. This one, interestingly enough, carries Rush as its main skill, and then on deletion, if you have 1 or fewer tamers, you may play 1 Kirya Ononuma from your hand without paying the cost, and then you get to save this card underneath it. Additionally, it carries Reboot for its inheritable, and is a dinosaur, but is also treated as a Blue Flare, so very cool. Moving into the brand new male Bergermon here, this one carries Blocker as its main skill, and then on deletion, you may place 1 Digimon card with Blue Flare trait from your trash under any of your tamers, and then you get to save this Digimon. Additionally, it carries Blocker as its inheritable, and it is a machine, but also a Blue Flare. Moving into the brand new Metal GREYMON for Blue Flare, it has Material Save 2, and additionally on play, this Digimon will gain Rush for the turn, but when attacking it has Digivolve 1 of your opponent's Digimon. Then this Digimon may Digivolve into a Blue Flare trait Digimon card under your tamer or tamers without paying the cost. It has a Digicross requirement -2 of being able to use a blue GREYMON and male Bergermon to reduce its play cost in total by 4, and then going into its inheritable at the end of attack. During once per turn, you may play 1 level 4 or lower Digimon card with the Blue Flare trait from under your tamers without paying the cost. This is a cyborg, but more importantly, it is also Blue Flare trait. Moving into the big level 6 of the Blue Flare archetype, as we have GREYMON. As a brand new GREYMON, this time is a dual color blue-black, can on play when digivolving, it digivolves 2 on one of your opponent's Digimon. Then if your opponent has 2 or more Digimon, you can return one of their level 4 or lower Digimon to the hand. Additionally, for its on deletion, you may play 1 Blue Flare or Crossheart trait Digimon card with a play cost of 5 or less from under your tamers without paying the cost, and then you get to save this card. Additionally, during all turns for its inheritable, this Digimon gets 2000 DP. It is a cyborg, but more importantly, it is also a Blue Flare. Moving into the final one, we have a brand new Kirya or Onuma. I always get messed up with that. At the start of your main phase, by placing 1 Digimon card with the Blue Flare or Crossheart trait from your hand under any of your tamers, you get to gain 1 memory. And then during all turns, when any of your Blue Flare trait Digimon cards with Digicross suspend this tamer, you get to place cards from under your tamers that can also be placed for the Digicross. Additionally, for its security effect, you get to play it. It is a general and a Blue Flare. That is all of the 6 cards we have for Blue Flare coming out of BT19, or for us, Special Booster 2.5. But let's talk about the benefits that it weighs to the strategy now. So starting off, one of its biggest benefits is that having another line of support is always good. Additionally, it does shift the playstyle a little bit, and what I mean is it shifts it in that we really want to load up Kirya and their tamers a bit more. As in the original with Blue Flare, you weren't really trying to load up in the same manner. What you were trying to do was try to rush your opponent down as quickly as possible, which this deck actually now exceeds at doing. But we really want to load up underneath our tamers with the save effects, and additionally making sure that we're putting more underneath them, which is actually a cool benefit. The brand new GREYMON I think is really cool because it does benefit that ability of rushing your opponent down, really wanting to attack and get that on deletion, but also allowing you to on play and use that effect. So if you play this going first, you can definitely load up a tamer or something underneath, or load up one of your tamers, or load up a Digimon under one of your tamers. So it does give you some abilities if you're trying to go second, first, and they kind of move around that. So I think that's really cool. Additionally, when we look at something like the brand new GREYMON that's Blue Flare, I think this card's absolutely fantastic. I think what makes it absolutely fantastic is the fact that it carries Rush. One thing that made Blue Flare already really dangerous in terms of being good was the fact that it was so aggressive, and with access to Rush on the new GREYMON, this deck now supersedes its ability to rush down the opponent. Like, this is no pun intended, as now it's able to simply bring out GREYMON. If it has just enough memory, it can do that and do a lot of damage. Also, I like that it has its on deletion of allowing you to, if you have one or fewer tamers, play the Curia from your hand and then you save it, so effectively allowing you to gain more tamers out of your hand instead of hard playing them. In Blue Flare, this was a bit advantageous because you could simply play Blazing Memory Boost to deploy Curia, but still, it's really good to see that there's another way to get Curia out of your hand, so it's really good to know. Talking about cards like Male Bergermon, I think it's very good just to have Blocker as an inheritable. It's still a very good card in terms of letting you place Blue Flare from your trash underneath some of your stuff, but it doesn't matter as much as the Blocker. And additionally, the brand new metal GREYMON's interesting because I do think you will be playing this because of how good it is. It does kind of hurt that you can't use GREYMONs that aren't blue, so it does kind of hurt that you can't use like the red starter deck GREYMON for the extra security attack +1. But with this now, you have access to a very good inheritable, which is kind of one of the reasons I would like to have it in the archetype. Because of that inheritable at the end of the attack, being able to play a level 4 or lower Digimon with the Blue Flare trait from under one of your tamers, basically screaming bring out GREYMON because it has Rush, is just too good to pass up, I think, in my opinion. If you go ahead and get that active, I mean, you're just basically trying to OTK, so being able to play out a Rusher is just so good. And then finally, talking about GREYMON before I get into Curia, I think what makes GREYMON so good here is that by being able to Digivolve 2 on Digivolving or when playing, it does so much because now you're kind of able to keep up with decks that have Ace Digimon, because as long as they don't have protection from Digivolve, you're pretty much getting rid of like their bodies pretty well with that effect. And then if they have 2 or more, which is something that Blue Flare was always good at dealing with, wider boards, it tries to punish your opponent by bouncing one of the level 4 lowers to the hand, which you've most likely done with Digivolve 2. So I really like the fact that this card has that ability. It just makes it solid. And its on deletion effect is another thing I wanted to talk about, because this does allow you to finally maybe replace the GREYMON from, I think, BT11 that people were using for the big Crossheart deck. You could replace it with this one because it does have an on deletion that kind of benefits the strategy, allowing you to play one Blue Flare or Crossheart trait Digimon card with a play cost of 5 or less from under your tamers, and then you get to save this GREYMON. It's actually pretty good because that means if for whatever reason you had to load into something like your level 4 Crossheart Shoutmon forms, you could then deploy them with this effect, which is pretty cool, and then load them up that way. But additionally, it's inheritable of 2000 DP. Like I said, can't be that bad. It's already really good. And then talking about Curia, I think what makes this Curia so good is the fact that it's a memory booster and a loader at the same time, where you get to place that one card with Blue Flare or Crossheart, and then you get that memory. And then for its ability to suspend itself and then use Digi-Crossing requirements from under your tamers is just so good. It just kind of allows you to keep looping. As long as you can get enough memory in this deck, you're going to be punishing the opponent. Going into finally talking about kind of the benefit it goes going forward, I think one of the advantages that Blue Flare gets in that it's going to return to the meta is that this deck always had a simplified game state plan where it wants to rush down the opponent. I think that the fact that this hasn't changed does help this deck because it's very intuitive. I almost wanted to recommend this as a beginning deck to people, but I think one of the problems I always have with this deck is its price point. Sometimes cards fluctuate because you really want to play this with its best cards. You don't always want to have to play this deck because it's on budget only, but I think because of the new support, this deck is now more budget friendly to play, and it's a bit more interesting to utilize. The main factor I wanted to finish with is the fact that this deck is always had that simplified ability to just rush down the opponent, so it gives itself a chance to enter a meta at any time to kind of be this little, oh, it can just poke your opponent down if your opponent's running decks that aren't very intuitive to being fast. Sometimes a lot of decks want to build. This deck does want to build, but it also benefits from hitting really quickly so your opponent can't respond. So by the time you've already kind of got to that point, your opponent, even if they have some setup, they've already lost a lot of security, and then you can rush them down with combinations of Digicross and other things. So my main thing is with BT 2.5, this is definitely a deck that's in the rogue position for sure, but it definitely can steal spots when people aren't expecting, as it's very reminiscent to something like Imperial in the last couple of sets, where I think once you give this specific deck another wave of support, depending on what it does, as long as there's some applicability, the strategy always finds a way to roll into people's situations because it has a lot of good tools to use. Like, it's got a lot of attacking. I think one thing too to remember is that we do have some type of removal in the form of the GREYMON. I think one thing this deck definitely was needing is some more removal, because it doesn't have enough. It's usually just stunning and possibly using Digivolve. I think one benefit would have been to give a little bit more removal, like bouncing cards. I think would have been cool, so there is that aspect. But pretty much this deck is still going to be very interesting. It's going to roll out really well, I think, into the BT 2.5 post format, because once we receive it, we won't be receiving any actual decks until April, so this is going to be a really interesting format to watch once these cards are released. But it is good that you pay attention to this deck now, because you don't want to get caught by this deck, because it can easily take you out when you're not paying attention, because it is not a deck to mess with. It is a very good and competent strategy. But that's all I've got for you guys today, and as always, this has been Brad. This has been What's the Scoop featuring with a Blue Flare, and ultimately I'm signing off, and for all of you out there, to sign on.